not too likely that he's going to get thought seized, although it's not out of the question. And he's certainly just death when it comes to blightning. And even Esper Charm, if somebody, whacks him out of your hand, during your upkeep. And we do that a lot with our Esper Charms, to try to finish off the game and so forth. And you can, boom, drop that guy into play and at least do something. So that's kind of nice that he has that. But the main thing is that he's just a beefy 4/4 for 4, and he just really makes our other creatures just go crazy. So that's a general breakdown, of the creatures that we're playing, and that's why we call it Monsters Inc. We have all these creatures. We have the Scullers. Brian opted not to play the Thought Seizes, and I think that that's reasonable. I've got to say, I do think it's reasonable because we're already doing so much damage to ourselves with Pain Lands, and we don't have a lot of ways to produce black without hurting ourselves, really just our Birds of Paradise. Obviously, Ancient Ziggurat won't work for Thoughtseize. So I think that it's a very reasonable direction that he took the deck, and it's got plenty of pressure. Now, I've given you a general breakdown of what creatures we have here. The only spells in the deck, and again, Monsters Inc. is a pretty reasonable name for this deck. The only spells are our 3 nameless inversions here, and that's going to help with our Murmuring Bosks. It's going to help us have those suckers come into play untapped. And it's going to just be nice general removal. Also, when we have stuff like Double Strike and stuff like that, now it's a bit of a non-combo with Doran the Siege Tower, so you do have to watch it kind of carefully. It can, although it's if your Doran is getting blocked by other creatures, you can kind of make them weaker and so forth. But outside of Doran, sometimes you'll have Rafik down and maybe attack with a War Monk, and that War Monk can just go absolutely crazy if you nameless inversion it. So we can kind of have that boost and put things kind of over the top. And then we have a couple Paths to Exile, and those are going to be nice both from the standpoint of creature removal, of course, and from the standpoint of whacking our own creatures with them to get a bit more mana out. And then we do have a Miser Lockstone Warhammer in the deck. David Mills is a big fan of having a Miser Lockstone Warhammer around. You kind of never know. Probably if I was playing fairies, I would very strongly consider a Miser Lockstone Warhammer. It's kind of a weird card, It can really just kind of change the game and take things over, and can pull you out of some pinches and so forth. And this deck, we've got so many Pain Lands in this deck. We've got, and we have some things to help us with that. I mean, we've got our Noble Hierarchs and our Birds of Paradise, which take a lot of the pressure off of that. But we can do a lot of damage to ourselves, and there's not a super lot of ways to easily gain life. We do have the Kitchen Finks, and that's great, but the Lockstone Warhammer helps that out a bit. If you're not really feeling wacky, if you're really feeling like playing it a bit more straight-laced, I guess that could be one more Kitchen Finks. But I think equipment's nice. It's nice to have a bit of what's a Warhammer between friends. As we take a look at the sideboard here, this is a bit of a homebrew when it comes to his sideboard. So I think that Brian largely came up with this himself. He's got some nifty choices in here, and some other things I'm not sure about, but it obviously went very well for him. He's got 2 more Paths to Exile and 2 Terrors, and he's also got 3 Guttural Responses. I like those because they're cheap and kind of he can stay on top of people with them. He's got 2 Relic of the Progenitus. We like this card a lot. We actually strongly considered playing a couple of them in the sideboard of our 5-color deck when we were struggling a bit with Esperlark, which is really, by the way, Esperlark is not one of the good matchups with our 5-color deck. So I like that call. It's nice. Deals with that graveyard. Gets it a bit on in hand. Then he's got 2 more Kitchen Finks, which is nice. Obviously, just from the standpoint of if you're playing against red or playing against any kind of aggressive mirror-ish matchup or white weenie, what have you. And then finally, a kind of a fun choice here, and I think something that worked out pretty well for him is 4 Scattershot Archers, and this is something to really kind of jack up fairy decks and to kind of stay on top of them, and keep them from sort of taking you out. Now we did a lot of testing with this deck, and ultimately, like I said, we opted not to play it, but I got to tell you, I think that this is going to be one of those here to stay decks where you can really play it and evolve it and evolve it. And there's going to be some new cards coming out, as they always do from time to time, and it definitely seems that the research and development department at Wizards has gotten the message that that the people love gold cards. I love gold cards. I think gold cards are fun. They're a great way to, bring flavor and power to the game, but yet still keep things balanced. And, so it's, we're going to have new cards coming out, new cards printed and so forth. And that's, always going to be a factor. Now, what I want to do is finish up here by taking a look at some of our specific matchups and talking a little bit about the way this deck is going to play out and, what to kind of look for from here. Now, in terms of the White Weenie matchup, as we saw, as Brian Robinson bounced Cedric, I believe Cedric Phillips, from the top 8 3-0. Obviously, that's a good matchup, but that's nothing surprising. One of the simple rules of Magic is that if you're playing a small, fast creature deck, then sort of a deck that has bigger creatures is going to beat you. That's just a bit of a hard, fast rule of Magic. That's not always the case. Every once in a while, the small creature deck has some sort of an X factor that really puts it over the top. That happened with Imperial Armor, with White Weenie at some point. It happened actually 2 nationals back to back. That's how I lost in the national finals to Matt Lindy, although he never hit me with Imperial Armor, but he got there because of Imperial Armor. And the next year, our teammate, it was also a deck I built, by the way. So I may have squeaked past the deck that I built when Justice played it in Paris, but it didn't happen for me at U.S. Nationals the next year. Regardless, me, Matt, John Finkel, and Bryce Kearns were able to nicely represent the U.S. and win a Team World Championship, so it was plenty of good memories. The next year, our teammate Kyle Rose, our Tongo Nation teammate Kyle Rose, took our White Weenie deck at Nationals, and he won. And the reason why was he was exploiting the card Waylay, which for a little while kind of worked like a wacky Mega Ball Lightning card. It was sort of hard to explain. But anyway, sometimes the white decks are just going to be so fast and so good that you really don't have a chance. And I do like the White Weenie decks in this environment, but they're hardly mega broken, and they don't have any card that's going to equalize and really help them get around. You could see some of the games when Brian faced off against Cedric, where he just would have such a massive size advantage on the board, and even stuff like Cedric's Glorious Anthems weren't enough to compete with Wiltleaf Liege, which is double pumping his guys, and his guys were just so much bigger in the first place. And he had Rock's Warmonk. I think the first game is pretty funny. I believe that, and I don't even know how this could have happened, but apparently, this seems. I heard Randy Buehler say this. I don't know if it's true. Oh, I guess it could happen. He basically said that that Brian, playing Monsters Inc. here, ended up with like 70 life at the end of the game, and I guess that must have been from creatures chump blocking, probably Rock's Warmonks that were getting pumped by maybe Rafika the Many and Wiltleaf Lieges and so forth. So you can gain a tremendous amount of life. Oh, duh. When I was talking about the obviously life game, we of course have our nice Rock's Warmonks as well, which give us a lot of that life back. So we go down in life a lot from the damage that our lands can do us, but we also have a number of ways to bounce back, especially if our opponent doesn't have kind of a key removal spell and whatnot. So the White Weenie matchup is obviously something that's favorable. I think that my intuition, we didn't test this deck much against Boat Brew because Boat Brew wasn't really a dominant deck yet at that point. But it did, obviously, I think that it's a very easy deck to misplay against if you don't know what's going on, because you don't necessarily realize how, once again, how buck nasty this deck can get on you, because you can already have some creatures down that are kind of deceptively big, especially because of your Noble Hierarch, but you have so many ways to take a creature that's already kind of bad news and make it way worse. Doran the Siege Tower can take your creatures that have higher toughness than power, like your birds and your hierarchs and your Rock's Warmonks, and he can make them a bit worse. And then of course we talked about our Wiltleaf Lieges can just make a gigantic difference in the size of our creatures, as can our Rafika the Many. And of course we have Treetop Villages to kind of help give us a little bit more pressure to try to finish things off. So my guess is in the Boat Brew matchup, we're big creatures. We really come after them. Their Wrath of Gods are very, very, very significant. And one of the things I think that as this deck evolves,